learners with definitions only or examples only. And then Hilary Nesi later on did another study comparing just the effect of definitions versus definitions and examples in writing. And she didn't find any significant differences. So what was going on? Everyone likes examples. Why is this evidence so inconclusive? Well, I think one of the problems that in the reading and the writing tests given in those early studies, they were both based on difficult words. And difficult words are okay in reading tests, but I don't think they're so good in writing tests. First, because as the authors of those studies themselves recognized, writers don't normally use words that are not familiar to them. And then the incomprehension factor, of course, can affect the writing process and end up affecting the writing scores, which constitutes a not negligible intervening variable. Another problem is that there was no real distinction at the time made between examples meant to help comprehension and examples meant to help production. And as Philippe Humblet once said, a decoding learner is obviously interested in the meaning of a lexical item, whereas an encoding learner is interested in a word's syntactic features and collocates. So they need different kinds of examples. Examples to help production or writing, they should exhibit syntactic features and collocates. But this can sometimes introduce an extra layer of complexity, which can end up compromising language comprehension. On the other hand, examples to help comprehension should contain contextual clues to enhance meaning. However, they don't always exhibit important syntactic features and collocation, so they may fail to help language production. And I've looked for examples that help both production and comprehension at the same time, and they're not that easy to find. So last year, I decided to take another look at the way learners use examples. And what I did in this study was I tried to keep comprehension and production apart. So I tested comprehension with difficult words that were unknown to a similar group of students. And I tested production with words that were easy to understand, but, tricky to use. So they were known to a similar group of students, but they typically generated errors. This 2012 study also distinguished between examples for comprehension, which all contain contextual clues, and examples for production, which all exhibited the target syntactic and features and collocation. And because one example might not be enough, I was also so interested in finding out whether multiple examples would help more. And these were my results last year. Definitions definitely helped in the comprehension test, but one corpus example also did, and 3 corpus examples helped as much as definitions. Definitions didn't help in the production test, but 1 corpus example did, and 3 corpus examples helped a lot. Now this study, produced very encouraging results, but it was a one-off study, and it was conducted in a very specific higher education setting. And because the results were very different from previous research, I thought replication was absolutely necessary. I wanted to find out whether the findings were reliable and whether they were generalized. Can't say it. So this study, I did kind of a what Port and Abel call a conceptual replication. I used a different population sample. Before I had used undergraduates. This time I used secondary school students. And there were slight changes in the research design. The comprehension test was pretty much the same. The production test was a bit different because in 2012, it involved correcting sentences containing typical errors. And in this study, the participants were asked to write their own sentences in a controlled translation task. The subjects were 50 students. They were 11th grade or second last year students at a state secondary school in Portugal. CEFR level between A2 and B1. 24 females, 26 males, and these were the words tested in the comprehension test. What they have in common, they were just chosen at random, but it was important that they didn't have any cognates in Portuguese. And I also made sure they lied outside the Oxford 3000 list, because it's a list of words that are very frequent in English and other words that are not that frequent but are words that learners are frequently exposed to. And this is what the comprehension test looked like. So the students had to choose the best translation for the word in bold, in this case feigning, in a multiple choice translation test. The sentences chosen were concordances taken from the BNC, COCA, or UK WAC. And I chose them so that they didn't exhibit any contextual clues to help decoding. So they really had to know the word. And all the distractors, in this case, in the multiple choice options, were plausible because they all collocate with the Portuguese for indifference. And they were also chosen using the Deep Dig tool by Eckhard Big and also using word sketches from a Portuguese corpus. This is what the production test looked like. These were the words tested for production, fairly easy words. And they all lie within the Oxford 3000, so the students were very probably A1, A2, B1 level, likely to have heard of them. But these are all words that are very tricky to use for native speakers of Portuguese. And they generate typical errors. For example, Portuguese speakers tend to say to vote in someone instead of to vote for someone, to depend of something instead of depend on something, or to call someone to a particular number, or something matches with something, or to use a shirt instead of to wear a shirt, or to pay something instead of to pay for something, to telephone to something or to someone. Again, transitivity, to approve something instead of to approve of something, and to have a certain number of meters instead of to be a certain number of meters long, and then to be good in something. So these were the production test words. And this is what the production test looked like. How would you translate this into English? And they were given a sentence in Portuguese with the key words that they had to use in English there so that they wouldn't avoid the word that was being tested. And hopefully this would generate the error, I already paid the trip instead I already paid for the trip. Procedure, test conditions. Students were divided into 4 random groups. The definitions group, one group receiving only 1 example, one group receiving 3 examples, and the control group, no references. The definitions group, back in 2012, I had used definitions from the Longman Dictionary. In this study, I decided instead to use definitions that not only explain meaning, but also help in the ways which words are used. So I used definitions from CoBuild Online because they tend to be like that, and I also had to make some custom-made definitions. And of course, all other dictionary information was removed. I was only interested in the definition, and for polysemous words, only the relevant sense was given. I was not interested in this control task to test findability, only the usability of the definitions. The examples groups were not given examples from existing dictionaries because existing dictionaries don't give enough examples generally, and they generally don't differentiate between examples for production and examples for comprehension. So instead, I prepared a full reference sheet with carefully selected full sentence concordances from the BNC, COCA, and UK WAC. And this is the kind of concordances the students got for the comprehension test. So you can see here the word in question is grime, and all the concordances contain contextual clues about the meanings of grime. Grime has to be removed, you take it out with a shampoo, windows get covered in grime, and things like that. And this was what the concordances for the production test looked like. So here you can see they all focus on the fact that you have to use for after the verb pay. And these are my results, the comprehension test results. So Ananova showed that the differences were significant, and then I did some post hoc comparisons, and the definitions group, the one corpus example group, and the three corpus example group all showed significant differences from the control. Then one corpus example was not significant, but definitions and three corpus examples were significant. Interestingly, there was no difference between definitions only and three corpus examples. So three corpus examples helped as much as definitions. And these results were exactly the same as the ones I got in the 2012 study. In the production test results, again, the differences were significant, and in the post hoc comparisons, comparing with the control group, the only experimental condition that showed significant results was three corpus examples. So unlike the previous study, one example was not enough, and co-build type definitions were also not enough for writing. So summing up, definitions helped in comprehension, one corpus example helped in comprehension, three corpus examples helped comprehension as much as definitions. Definitions did not help production, one corpus example did not help production, three corpus examples did. Now, why was that? Why didn't just one example or one co-build type definition help in the production test? One example had helped in the previous study, and co-build type definitions are very similar to examples, so they should have helped too. One thing that was different was in the 2012 study, the students had been told the sentences in the production test contain mistakes, so they were really actively looking for errors and ways to correct them. In the present study, the target sentence really looked very easy. You know, write a sentence with vote, write a sentence with good. So the students may not consulted the examples and definitions given to them as carefully. I think it's important here to remember that there's really no reason why learners should consult dictionaries or any other reference if they think they already know how to use the language, even if they're wrong about it. But, you know, why would they check something if they think they already know the answer? So my conclusion is both studies confirm that it's important to distinguish between examples to help decoding, which must contain contextual clues, and examples to help encoding, which should contain syntactic feature and collocation information. Both studies show that examples with contextual clues can help comprehension, and one example can help a little, three examples can help as much as definitions. However, while one example helped production in 2012, this study suggests that a single example or even a definition exhibiting the features, the target features the learner needs, may not be enough for language production, especially when learners are unaware of their language needs or difficulties. However, multiple examples seem to help regardless. Thank you very much. Oh, these are my references. And if you want to know more about this study, it's coming out next year.
Thanks very much, Anna. We finished really well on time, so that gives us plenty of time for questions. Jeff, yeah.
Is the microphone without?
Better with if you can get
one. My name is Jeff. I want to ask you whether you encountered any evidence of the senior high school students being unwilling to read the second and third example after they had already thought they understood the first example.
Well, I compared students using just one example and students using three examples, and the one who had access to three examples did much better. So I think they read the three examples, yes.
Hi, I wonder if there's an upper limit to the number of examples that dictionary users can take as opposed to a lower limit, if there's a limit where people find it so confusing that they don't actually read them anymore.
That's the next study I'm doing. I've already collected the data. And I still haven't had time to look at it. But I'm doing that next. Thank you.
Adam. Adam next, and then we'll...
yeah. For the 2012 and 2013 studies, I probably missed it, but usually if there's no significant, if the result isn't statistically significant, there's sort of two interpretations. One is that there isn't an effect, and the other is that the sample size wasn't big enough, and a bigger sample size, it's always open to the interpretation that a bigger sample size was needed to show the result. So could you just...
Yeah, the sample sizes were similar in both studies. So there were 48 students in 2012 and 50 students in this study I did this year.
Yes, I wanted to ask basically the same question. Yes, the sample size. Do you think when you divide it into 4 that the sample size is enough to conclude?
Yeah, it would be good to carry out another replication, although people don't like replication studies very much. They like new studies all the time. But it would be good to try it again, and also with different students. I mean, I tested just Portuguese learners of English, but it would be good to test, maybe Chinese learners of English as well, and bigger population samples. Yes, a lot of replication still needed.
Oh, thank you.
I think Megan next, and then Daniel, yeah.
Thanks very much.
Where's it coming from?
Okay. Sorry. You had 2 different sets of words for comprehension. So one for comprehension, one for production.
Yeah.
Do you envisage at all having the same set of words so that you need to identify examples that are meant to help comprehension and examples that are meant to help production? So as a publisher, I'm always interested, how is it going to be applied? Obviously in the digital world, one doesn't need to worry about space, but how does one mark those separate things?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Thank you for asking. It's something I wrote about, but I didn't have time to present. It's, I think, maybe for comprehension purposes. Well, first, I think that electronic dictionaries should have separate links. Help me understand this word. Give me more examples to understand this word. Give me more examples to be able to use this word in context or to use this word in writing. And I think the comprehension words, there should be a focus on examples for comprehension for the more difficult words of the language, and a focus on examples for production, or on the more common words or the most frequent words of the language, words that people are more likely to use all the time. So thank you for asking that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that in most of the learners' dictionaries, you do get a slight effect of that, where you will get, say, salient collocations highlighted and then an example of it. I mean, certainly in Macmillan, I think that happens in the Cambridge one, the Oxford one too.
But it's not systematic.
No, I agree.
And it should be done in a more systematic way.
Of course, yeah, and with the technology we have now, that obviously should get a lot easier, yeah. Daniel, I think you're next.
Well, my question was very related to this one, almost the same one. I wanted to know whether you have a set of criteria, formal criteria maybe documented, which you used in order to choose either the examples for productive or for comprehensive purposes.
Well, for comprehension, I basically went for examples that had contextual clues, and the contextual clues had to be words that were easier to understand than the key word. I can't help comprehension if in the context I have words that are even more difficult than the word being tested.
And did you, okay.
Yeah, and for the production, they just, I tried not to get very difficult sentences. I had to filter. That's why I used UK WAC via GDEX, because it sort of tends to filter out the difficult examples. But they all had to exhibit the target syntactic feature or the target collocation.
So did you do it manually or
oh,
automated?
Yes.
Manually.
Very
okay.
much manually,
okay.
yes. Very much so.
Yeah, get the mic over here.
Patrick White from OUP. I just want to take issue a little with what you're saying about dictionary examples not distinguishing between production and comprehension, because as lexicographers we do try to do that, and one of the criteria we use will be taking the Oxford 3000, for example, making sure that those examples do try to cater for production scenarios. And as Michael was saying, you can embed within those examples or give in advance of them prepositional frames, collocational frames, and make sure you do show them. So I think there is, in printed dictionaries and increasingly in electronic dictionaries, a distinction between production and comprehension examples.
Yeah, but it's not very clear to the user. It's clear to the lexicographer, I think, but I don't think users are very aware of it. They see examples and, you know, it's just there. I don't think, yeah.
They are sometimes differentiated when you have embedded information within it. They are typographically presented differently, but I do take your point.
Any more questions? I mean, my question is that big one about how you what can we do to get over that problem that people don't look things up and check them if they think they already know them, and then they'll go on making the mistake about paying something instead of paying for something, and so on. I'm trying to think of some clever writing environment in which they are actually told, you know, they write their sentence because they think they know it, and then they're told.
Yeah, I think
this
this
wrong.
has to be integrated into language teaching. The whole concept of, you know, beware of the things that you're so sure about.
You think you already know.
And language teachers should have a little bit more awareness of, you know, how dictionaries can help their learners.
Sure. Oh no, that's very important. I'm thinking also of some sort of technological solution going forward. But,
I'm also thinking of one, but I'd rather not talk about it right now.
Okay. If there are no more questions, then in fact that gives us just the right amount of time, the 5 minutes for the switchover. So just thanks very much again to Anna for